Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze the main tactical theme in Arsenal's narrow 1-0 win over Crystal Palace. So in today's video, first we're going to focus on Crystal Palace's shape, then we'll shift to Arsenal's issue in possession, and lastly we'll focus on Declan Rice's impacts before Arsenal went down to 10 men. So when we break it all down and we do look at the board, we have Arsenal in a 4-3-3 and Crystal Palace starting this game in a 4-2-3-1. In terms of Arsenal's possession and territorial dominance, this was ultimately a battle between Arsenal's 3-2-5 and Crystal Palace dropping off into a 4-4-2. Arsenal's 3-2-5 witnessed Odegaard and Havertz pushing into pockets of space beyond the midfield bank. Martinelli and Saka were hugging the touchline, and then Declan Rice was joined by Thomas Partey in that midfield zone. White shifted out to a right center-back role, and Tomiyasu was in a left center-back role. Whereas when you look at Crystal Palace, they shifted into a 4-4-2 out of possession. They had Schlupp and Jordan Ayew tucking into very narrow positions alongside Lerma and Doucouré, and then Edouard and Eze were dropping off into the space between Thomas Partey and Declan Rice. The key here for Crystal Palace was to ensure that Thomas Partey and Rice couldn't get on the ball, and there were times where Thomas Partey shifted out in towards that wider position on the touchline, but then that would force Schlupp to shift out into that zone, and Edouard and Eze were sitting in between Rice. Outside of that, if Thomas Partey was in that central zone, Edouard and Eze stuck in between Rice and Thomas Partey to ensure that they couldn't get on the ball, and then the midfield bank tucked in very narrow and blocked off the passing lanes into Odegaard and Havertz. It was Odegaard who at times was shifting out towards the touchline zone to get on the ball, and Havertz was often pushing forward, looking to make forward runs in towards the gaps between the center backs and the full backs, or simply the center backs if Nketiah was dropping off a bit deeper. Therefore, with Rice and Thomas Partey struggling to get on the ball, the center backs did have a lot of time and space to carry it forward, and frankly it was Nketiah who did a very good job of checking off the center backs in towards those spaces in the midfield zone, receiving the ball and then doing a very good job of pushing forward with it and then sliding the ball out towards the wider areas to retain possession and attempt to get Saka and Martinelli into those 1v1 situations. The issue that Arsenal had with this shape was that with White and Tomiyasu holding those center back positions and Odegaard and Havertz pushing forward, now it was Saka and Martinelli who could get into those zones isolated with the fullbacks, but because Schlupp and Ayew didn't have to track the movement of White and Tomiyasu, they could often drop off to make it a 1v2 and provide protection for their fullbacks. We witnessed Schlupp do that for Mitchell, and then we also witnessed Ayew do that for Ward. And then even in situations where Odegaard and Havertz were looking to make those runs off the fullbacks and towards the half space, Lerma and Doucouré did a very good job of tracking that movement. So at the very best for Arsenal, it was 2v3, and if they wanted to pass them off towards the center backs could shift over, whether it be Guéhi tracking Odegaard and Lerma dropping off in towards a central position to cover for him. And there were times where you ended up seeing Anderson shifting out for Havertz or Odegaard, depending who was on that side. And you would see Doucouré dropping off in towards that center back position to provide cover. Ultimately, there were situations where they could get 3v3 combinations out in that zone, and it would simply require Rice or Thomas Partey to drop off into the half space so Tomiyasu or White could push forward. But what ended up happening was that in those situations, specifically down the left-hand side, even though Havertz and Martinelli were able to drag away 3 markers towards them, Tomiyasu doesn't offer a legitimate goal-scoring or creative threat in that final third area. So Palace were comfortable with selling out on Havertz and Martinelli and allowing Tomiyasu to receive the pullback. So what you ended up seeing was that when Martinelli or Saka did receive the ball out in those wider areas, on several occasions throughout that game, they were often outnumbered and they struggled to have an impact in the final third. Frankly, the only times where they did look to cause a threat was when they were played in behind. There were times where you witnessed either White or Thomas Partey looking to play balls around Mitchell for Saka, and you got into very good positions. And in the second half, you witnessed Tomiyasu playing a ball around Ward for Martinelli to break free and towards the Palace penalty area. Ultimately, Arsenal's most impactful player when they were 11v11 was Declan Rice, and you witnessed his all-round threat in that midfield zone. If you wanted him to break up play or recover possession, he was capable of doing that in his own third to disrupt the Crystal Palace attack. But there was also times where you witnessed him halting counterattacks or slowing down the transitional attack from Crystal Palace to ensure that they couldn't break forward to trouble the Arsenal backline. Rice was equally reliable in possession, and there were times where you witnessed him playing diagonal balls out towards the wide players, or simply switching out play towards that zone to try and get them into 1v1 situations. But more importantly, where Arsenal struggled to play through the center of the pitch, Rice's ability to find space away from Eze or Odegaard served as an asset. What ended up happening was that obviously when Crystal Palace were set, they did a very good job of ensuring that Thomas Partey and Declan Rice couldn't get on the ball. But there were several scenarios throughout this game when Arsenal and Palace were 11v11 where you witnessed Rice just shifting towards his left or shifting towards his right, the Crystal Palace front two not set, and then one of the center backs or even the midfielders being able to play the ball in towards Rice. He would be able to receive the ball and then play positive passes out towards the wider areas, and that would help Arsenal push forward. So evidently that was a key asset for Arsenal because he would be either sliding the ball out towards Martinelli or Saka or playing it out towards Tomiyasu, White, or Thomas Partey so that they could push forward and attempt to supply the ball out towards Martinelli and Saka. And then the other manner in which Declan Rice was causing problems for Crystal Palace was again he would be shifting to the left or to the right of Odegaard or Eze, who wasn't tracking his movement when they weren't set in a 4-4-2. And from there, Rice would be able to receive the ball in a pocket of space. He could drag a marker towards him, and then he would be able to bypass them with his ball carrying skills, carry the ball in towards the Crystal Palace half, and then slide the ball out towards the wider area. If that wasn't the case, then he would be able to receive the ball freely, dribble in towards the Crystal Palace half, and again, he'd be sliding the ball out towards Martinelli, or there were times where you witnessed him sliding the ball out towards Saka to help Arsenal progress their play. To no surprise, Rice was involved in the best chance that Arsenal created from open play. It was Rice in a set position, Arsenal looking to build in the final third, and you witness Saka dropping off the ball to Odegaard, Rice making a forward run off Eze and Odegaard, Eze reacting towards Rice's run late, and from there you witness Odegaard squaring the ball towards Rice. He takes a touch, carries it towards the edge of the penalty area, and then slides it across the defenders for Nketiah, running off to Correa, placing him in a legitimate goal-scoring position, but he ended up chipping his free effort over the keeper and over the net. However, the other significant theme to the overall result of this game was Arsenal reacting to Crystal Palace's mental lapses from quick set pieces. They were warned at the start of the opening half, where you witnessed Saka playing a quick free kick into the right channel for Thomas Partey, and he was able to pick out Martinelli unmarked at the back post, but Martinelli side volleyed his effort wide of the net. And in the build-up to the most decisive moment of the game, it was Martinelli playing a quick free kick into right half space and Nketiah reacting and making a run towards that zone. And he was able to round Johnstone to win the penalty that ultimately decided the game. So as you can see, this was another Arsenal performance that was a tad below the standard they set last season, as they struggled to consistently create chances from open play, but Rice's productivity in the midfield zone served as a key component to Arsenal's success.